I was 13, man. Start talking about weird things. No, really. Stand on the corner. You know anything about Spanish fly? What? Spanish fly? It always happens when you're 13. Only when you're 13 on up to like when you get married. Guys stand around and talk about Spanish fly, and it never starts with one of the guys on the corner. It's always some strange 13-year-old says, you know what? You know anything about Spanish fly? No, tell me about it. Well, there's this girl, Crazy Mary. You put some in her drink, man. She, yeah, Spanish, oh yeah, that's really groovy, man. Spanish fly is groovy, yeah. Boy. From then on, man, anytime you see a girl, well, yeah, some Spanish fly, boy. Go to a party, see 5 girls standing alone. Boy, I've had a whole jug of Spanish fly. I like that corner up over there. So I thought it only existed in Philadelphia, you know, and I'm working on I Spy, and Bob and I are working together. Sheldon Leonard comes up and says, boys, I Spy is going to Spain. A childhood dream come true. I said to Bob, you know, because he don't know nothing about it. I said, hey, Bob, you know what I'm going to pick up when I'm in Spain? He said, Spanish fly. I said, wait a minute, man. How'd you know about it? He said, are you kidding? There's a girl in my neighborhood in Berkeley named Crazy Mary. We gave her some stuff. And every time he told me a story, I had heard it. Every time I told him a story, he had heard it. We all knew the same story. So I figured there's got to be a guy about 2,000 years old that looks 13 going around the world. You guys know anything about Spanish fly? So Bob and I, man, we just sing. Oh, get some Spanish fly. Spanish fly. Love it. And we're riding on the plane. Spanish fly. Spanish fly. And we get in and go through customs. This is the land of Spanish fly. Spanish fly. We get in the cab. Ryan, the driver. Bob said, ask this guy if he knows where we can get some Spanish fly. I said, you know, ask the cab driver. No, it's the cab driver. He may know, man. Driver? Si, senor. Listen, you Spanish? Si, senor. You American? Yes. You come from America? Yes. You can tell me maybe you brought with you some American fly? Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and I woke up today, and I was literally waking up thinking about Bill Cosby and this revelation yesterday that Cosby, in the middle of court testimony, stated that he'd bought Quaaludes in the past. With the expectation that he would give these Quaaludes to women with whom he wanted to have sex. Like a lot of people, I was disturbed by what I heard. I think that this evidence or this information should be taken into account in terms of getting a fuller picture of Cosby's behavior in and outside of the bedroom, in and outside of his marriage. I talked about this yesterday, and I mentioned just my issues with Cosby, just as a human being, the choices he made as a husband, the fact that I don't consider him to be an entirely trustworthy person. But we do live in a country where you have to have this little thing called evidence. And it usually has to be physical evidence. And I'm not a lawyer here, so don't quote me as an attorney. But one of the concerns that I have about this whole Cosby thing is twofold. One, the whole thing about him buying drugs or having this idea that buying drugs for women to get them to have sex, that was already revealed long ago, years ago, decades ago actually, in his skit about Spanish fly and all that. So that's why I played that skit for you so you could hear it. I guess in his era, he and some of his friends maybe felt that buying certain drugs would get women into the mood. The same way there are guys I've seen who will buy liquor to get a woman to drink. Because when people drink, their inhibitions go down, which is one of the reasons why I always warn my daughters about getting drunk, in public or at parties or in situations where they want to be in control. So this idea of sort of wanting somebody to be under the influence so you can have sex,
That's nothing new. I don't think Cosby's the only one. And what's really true is that that in itself does not prove that you raped somebody. Because remember, in this deposition that Cosby gave him back in 2005, he did say that, and if you listen to those words carefully, he did state that he bought Quaaludes with the expectation that he would give those Quaaludes to women that he was going to have sex with, and that doesn't look good for him. I always grew up thinking that Quaaludes was something that you weren't supposed to take, that they were illegal, but apparently, I guess you can get a prescription or something. I don't know. Um, but it does say that he did buy a substance in hopes that the women that he was interacting with would be under the influence enough to want to have sex with him. That's all we know. What we do not know is, one, if he gave these drugs to women against their will, and two, if the women knew what they were taking when they took the drug. I mean, did he say, "Hey, here, take some aspirin," and they took the aspirin, and next thing you know, they passed out and woke up the next day, or did he slip the Mickey in their drink? And this does happen a lot, and I warn my daughters about that too. Don't let anybody else hold your drink. Be very careful about going to a guy's house and letting him make you a drink, because there are a lot of men who are serial predators who do this kind of thing to women to get what they want. So if that's the case, obviously we know that that makes you into a rapist, if you're doing one of those two things I just described. But here's the problem. We don't know. I mean, we don't have any physical evidence. And what leaves me conflicted about all of this is that you can't though pretend like you didn't have 20 something women come back and say this is what Cosby did to me. You can't deny that, because I mean, they have a voice and the voice should be heard. And I was talking to one of my girls about it, and she said, "Well, why would you come back years later and say this stuff years after the fact, and when you didn't say nothing back when it happened, allegedly happened back in 1975?" And I said, "Well, sweetie, in 1975, 40 years ago, things were different. Women didn't have as much of a voice as they deserve to have. And going to the police, especially when you're accusing a man like Bill Cosby, might lead you to get more ridicule than actual justice." And also, I truly believe that once this comedian brought the issue back to the surface, if Cosby did the things that he's accused of doing, I do think that there were alleged victims who felt empowered to speak up years later, now that they kind of felt like, okay, I've got support, I've got other people out here that have the same experience. We can stick together. We can, we should all support each other with our voice. That's if things happen the way the witnesses say that they happen. But one thing that cannot be thrown to the side, it cannot be denied, is that number one, you don't have enough physical evidence. So I think the $1 million question becomes: how many white women have to accuse you of raping them before we just assume that you did it, right? For the public, for a lot of people, I saw one of my good friends at Huffington Post, Mark Lamar Hill, who's been a Cosby critic for a long time. Mark has never liked Bill Cosby. I mean, they used to fight in Philadelphia, and Cosby kind of blew him off. And I think that there's always been, with he and Michael Eric Dyson, there's always been this very nasty animosity toward Cosby. And I think to some extent, that reflects the fact that Cosby has always been a little bit of an arrogant jerk toward people who didn't see eye to eye with him. I think he lacked empathy and sympathy for people who were going through situations and circumstances that he could not understand. And I didn't like his attitude. But I think at the same time, I see a lot of people sort of seeing this as their vindication, their opportunity to really get him and take him down. And it's not to say that he shouldn't be, because again, if he's a rapist, I mean, my goodness, I mean, you can't support that. But my $1 million, another $1 million question I have is evidence necessary? I mean, what physical evidence do they have? And what physical evidence is necessary for us to presume that this man committed this crime? Because there are people who and it bothers me a little bit, because there are people on the other extreme who they every time a black man gets taken down for anything, they want to believe it's a conspiracy theory. Oh, the man's doing this, and the man's setting him up, and the man's, well, sometimes the man didn't do it. Sometimes the man is you. But while that is true, we cannot pretend like there haven't been conspiracies to take down powerful black men in the past. I'm not saying this is the case with Cosby at all, but I'm saying that we just don't know. I mean, the thing that makes a conspiracy so compelling is that they make it appear so obvious that you don't think it's a conspiracy. Conspiracy doesn't really work if you don't make it blatantly or abundantly clear that that one truth exists when something else is true instead. So I think that what I'm really seeing is I'm looking at a situation where Cosby had way too many relationships with way too many women. And it's funny because he's a married man. He's probably had more sex than most single men I know, with more women, rather. And what I see is that these were complex relationships. I think that it's very difficult to understand why someone allegedly raped you and you continue to take money from him. You continue to go see him. Um, you know, uh, one of my girls said the other day, she said that's not in some of those cases that's not rape, that's a relationship, or that's not so much a relationship, but maybe that's an agreement. Let's say that. And I'm not going to say that that's true or not true, but what I will say is that some of these things don't make any sense. Most sexual assault victims I know don't continuously go back to see the person who assaulted them. They don't continuously take money from that person over a long period of time. And I know we live in an environment that's politicized and politically charged, and people want to take all accountability away from certain parties in these situations, which is why we had that crazy thing at University of Virginia where this fraternity was accused of gang raping a girl, and they didn't even look for any evidence. They didn't talk to any alleged alleged perpetrators. They just assumed that it must be true because somebody told the story. But honestly, I'm sorry. That's not the way we should do justice in America. That's not the way we should prosecute crimes in America. Certainly. And again, I don't think Cosby is going to end up in prison. I think he will end up paying money in the court of law. And when you're talking about civil suits, it does become about the money. I think at this point, I don't know if it's all about getting justice or getting Cosby incarcerated, because I really think honestly if everything was all about justice all the time, you would have seen more people going to the police at the time the alleged incidents occurred, as opposed to 20, 30 years later when Gloria Allred is lining them up and saying, "Pay me and it'll be better. Put aside $100 million and it'll be okay." But again, it doesn't mean that that there isn't a place for this kind of economic justice. Meaning, you make someone pay punitive damages for things that they did to hurt other people. Absolutely, but but I guarantee you, if Cosby wrote a check for $100 million, you wouldn't really hear much from Gloria Allred or those who are coming after him. That's a fundamental fact. Now, that does not mean that Cosby's innocent. It does not mean that they're all only after the money, but it does mean that a lot of this is about money at this point, and that if Cosby was not a rich man, I don't think that it would be what it is right now. I don't think that certain people would be as aggressive about it as they are right now. That's just my analysis of it. If I've confused you by not sounding like I've taken one position or the other, then that's exactly what I intended to do, because I just don't know. I mean, and that's again the thing. I'm definitely curious. I'd love to hear comments from anybody who can give a perspective, and I'm talking about a logical perspective, not one that says, "Oh, he's definitely a rapist because he's been accused and he bought drugs that he was going to give to women." That to me doesn't make someone a rapist. I'm sorry, it doesn't. We have to be honest about that. But at the same time, I don't want to hear from people who think, "Oh, it's a conspiracy by the man. They're trying to bring Cosby down, and this ain't true, and there's no way he did this." I'm sorry, just because he was Heathcliff Huxtable don't mean he can't be raping somebody. And in fact, actually, it's funny. The only two things I really like about Cosby, three things I like about Cosby, and I never take this away from him, no matter what. One, I loved what he did with Fat Albert, because he made that part of his dissertation when he was getting his EDD, or I think that's what it's called. And it's not a PhD, but similar. He used that cartoon as a way to basically educate urban children. You don't see a lot of celebrities do that. Most celebrities on TV, black celebrities, feed black people ignorance. He wanted to feed black children education. You have to give him credit for that. Two, The Cosby Show. He featured images of blackness that were positive. He did a show about HBCUs on a different world. He could have done something totally different, but he chose to deliberately support HBCUs, and it led to a substantive increase in the percentage of people who applied to HBCUs later. Three, he gave $20 million to Spelman College. There are a lot of other celebrities out here who are making just as much, if not more, money than Cosby. None of them have ever signed a check that big for any HBCU. Dr. Dre wants to give his money to USC, a big white university that doesn't want to accept black people, doesn't hire very many black professors. And then you've got Floyd Mayweather, who will brag to you about buying a $5 million car, but won't ever brag to you about buying $5 million in scholarships to a historically black college. And personally, when I created things like the Black Wealth Boot Camp, my argument is that we've got to get rid of this ridiculous mentality. So those are the three things I like about Cosby. There's really not much else I've ever liked about Cosby. I never thought he was that funny, to be honest with you. I'd watch his stand up and be like, wow, I enjoyed Eddie Murphy making fun of Cosby. That was actually funny to me. But to see Cosby in stand up, you'd have to pay me money to make me watch something like that, and it had to be a lot of money. Also, as a person, as a human being, now I've always felt that Cosby was over the top in terms of his arrogance. I think he should have respected more people along the way. He definitely made some enemies because of that, and the fact is that when you pile up all these enemies, and if you've got this crazy dirt in your background, because I think there's a lot of evidence to say Cosby was a big time womanizer and sleeping with girls young enough to be his granddaughter. Well, if you're doing that kind of stuff, those chickens do come home to roost on some level. And to that, I have to say Cosby doesn't have my respect. But but I encourage people, anybody who wants to just say, he's guilty, he's guilty. If you want to say it, okay, fine. Just give me some evidence, give some physical evidence, and then I think a lot of this will be resolved. But if you don't have any physical evidence and you have this so-called eyewitness testimony, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm trying to figure out, is this a preponderance of guilt? I mean, because in civil court you need a preponderance. Preponderance means that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that there has to be a greater than 50-50 chance that you did the thing that you were accused of doing. In this case, I would say that it appears that there's a preponderance of guilt. I mean, there's a lot of accusers, telling very similar stories. But if you're talking about guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, that this does not meet that standard, because reasonable doubt means that a reasonable person would have some doubt that you did commit this crime, and I don't know any reasonable people who do have some kind of a doubt. So that's what I want to say on this. Give me your thoughts. Feel free to share. I don't pretend to know all the answers. I don't pretend to know the truth, but I'd love to hear what you think. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. Please take care. God bless. I'm gone. Peace.